Thank you, Nick. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. It is November 9th, 2020. This is the first session in our ongoing meetings with regards to the requirements from New York State on police reform and reinvention collaboration. I am town supervisor. I'm here basically just to listen in. Chief Oliva will pick it up. He will be leading this. But I'd be welcome to answer any questions that I am asked. I'll turn it over to Chief Oliva. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Just briefly, on June 12th of 2020, Governor Cuomo signed Executive Order 203, mandating all government entities that employ police departments in the state of New York to conduct a comprehensive review of their department. This review is to include deployments, strategies, policies, procedures, and practices. The purpose is to ensure that the police are addressing the needs of their community or the communities they serve while fostering trust, fairness, and legitimacy. In addition, the review is to address any racial bias or disproportionate policing of communities of color. So I'd like to say that since 2014, when I took over early 2014, we strive for continuous improvement, and every day is an opportunity to learn, and that's how we try to run the department. I want to thank you again for joining us. The first two meetings out of this collaborative are slated to be listening sessions, so we are going to reserve any comment or not really answer questions during the first two sessions, the first one tonight, the second November 18th during the same time frame. So if you do have concerns or questions, we're going to take notes. The session is being recorded, and we will address those questions and concerns as part of our process in this police collaborative. So I don't want to, I'd like to get as many people to speak as possible at this meeting. Again, thank you for joining. Our moderator this evening is Nicholas DiPaolo, and he's just going to go over a few ground rules quickly, and then we're off. So again, thank you for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. So the way we will kind of set up a queue for people to speak is that anyone who wishes to make a comment, please message us your name in the chat feature, or alternatively, you could use the Zoom raise hand feature. We will call upon you in the order that you requested to speak. We do ask that your video is enabled when you're speaking, and each speaker will have 3 minutes to make commentary. And again, as the chief had mentioned, all of the meetings are recorded. So at this time, we will take requests from anyone wishing to make any comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Nick, am I still on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
So just one other comment. So we received guidance from New York State. They sent out a workbook and sort of a timeline. There's basically 4 sections that they ask us to address on this committee. We're going to keep all of the meetings transparent. What I plan to do is post the questions in advance on the website so that people have the opportunity that are on the committee to view them. I sent out an email probably around 5:30 welcoming the committee members. So we're going to put out the questions for each meeting prior to the meetings. If there's enough time for public comment, once we hear from committee members, then we welcome that. But if people do have additional questions, we did set up that police reform at mountpleasantny.com email address, and we would encourage people, if they did have questions, that to use that email, please, and they could certainly ask additional questions. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we do have a couple of people wishing to speak, so I'm going to go in the order that it was requested. Mr. Lee Parker, if you could go ahead and start your video.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're all set, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious if there is data. Well, I know, of course, you would know this for the town, but if there's data kind of by town, county wide of the racial makeup of the various police forces within the county, certainly, yeah, we would like to be able to get this information for the town, because I think it helps direct what some of the questions that the community would have going forward.
I could try to compile that information and post it. Let me see where I can find, where I might be able to find that. And if I can find something recent, I will post it for you.
That'd be great. I mean, the only data I was able to find was only up through 2013.
Okay.
So I'm sure, I'm hoping there's more recent information than that.
Okay.
And then also, out of curiosity, how much training annually is there done on de-escalation? And that's something I don't really need an answer to, but that would be a question that I would have. How are people trained, and what's the commitment to the town on training their various people on de-escalation techniques? Because from what I've seen to date, that would be maybe the most powerful thing we could do.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person wishing to speak is Kelsey Paget. If you can go ahead and enable your video.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're all set.
Okay, great. I'm Kelsey Paget. I got a lot of things to say. I just got the message that I'll be part of the committee, which I'm excited about. But let me go through what I have here. First, I'd like to say that these two meetings should not be the only meetings you have with the public, which you sound open to being very transparent with all this process. This meeting was announced on Friday afternoon, so getting the word out about it is pretty difficult. I don't know that anybody who's not super attuned to what's going on in the town government knows about this meeting. And, we really need to reach out to communities of color within the town. And you might have to take different formats than just public hearings and meetings like this to get the real kind of feedback to know what different feelings on police interaction in the town. All right, so imagine if your house was on fire and only police officers arrived. They don't have the adequate equipment or training to put out the fire. What they are trained in is solving crime. And so that's most likely what they're going to do. They might arrest you for, suspicion of arson while the fire continues to burn. Maybe you'd give protest and as they try to arrest you since you only called for help. And perhaps your protest would, cause more problems. Maybe you'd get hurt. Maybe you'd die. And, maybe this is good because you're an arsonist and it'll keep you off the streets. The likelihood of that is low. And all the time, your fire's still burning. Now, that scenario is obviously absurd and ridiculous. That would never happen. We have firefighters. We don't train police to deal with fires. We train firefighters to deal with fires. And they are there, and it is a really great service provided to the citizens of every locality. But this is now how we treat mental illness, houselessness, hunger, petty crime, teenage vandalism, neighborly disputes, domestic issues, and drug addictions. These are problems that we have the capability of helping or solving. We're just sending the wrong civil servant. And now if you ask police officers, they'll tell you they're overburdened. They're asked to be doctors, psychologists, social workers, educators, traffic monitors, and law enforcers. It's unreasonable to expect a single person to be able to do all of these jobs at the same time. This is why you see well-meaning officers doing their best with their training and equipment and still failing their communities. Therefore, Mount Pleasant should take funds from policing and put towards community justice initiatives, after school programs, other possible social services. Now, I know most of the social services happen at the county level, but there must be things we can do within the town and in the town's budget. And, for example, an information campaign on who to call if someone's having a mental health crisis instead of just dialing 911 where someone with a gun will show up. You should do this not because you don't support the police, but because you do. If you want to have a police department that people trust and feel comfortable calling in an emergency, no matter the color of their skin, you have to set up the cops to succeed. You have to change their job from being society's catch-all towards actual law enforcement. Poverty and illness are not crimes, and we should not send people trained to arrest criminals to attend these crises. This is a big task, but a most worthy one. We need to rethink the way we treat people in our community who need our support. I have a lot of specific suggestions, but I will save those for another time because I'm certain I'm over 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person wishing to speak is a Mr. James Collins. Please enable your video.
Make sure we counterbalance the discussion and make sure that we also focus on all the wonderful positive things that Mount Pleasant Police does day in and day out. Me personally, I know the Mount Pleasant Police has been to my home many, 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 many times with a sick parent over the years, and they've done wonderful work. So I think we just need to ensure that we focus and look at this problem holistically and look at the good and looking for opportunities for improvement. But there's a lot of things that we need to focus on as well, besides just, opportunities to improve. And another part of the discussion I think we need to include is, how do we make sure that the police are treated in a way by the public in a manner that we would like them to be treated. So again, we need to look at this holistically. We need to look at the big picture and not lean toward one side or the other. And that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person wishing to speak is a Mr. Rocco DeRubius. Please enable your video.
Hey, can you hear me now?
You're all set, sir.
Great. Well, thanks for having this meeting tonight. I also kind of agree with what James Collins said, and I want to be very careful. I've lived in this town for over 20 years, and I personally can say that I've interacted with the police department, many times over various things. I've seen some of the, community events they have held at the station and what they've done for the town. And I think that we as a community have done an excellent job, as well as the police department. So that being said, thank you for that. I want to be very careful when we say that police reform. I hate that word reform. I think that this has to be a community effort reform in a sense. We have to educate the community on what our town is already doing, because I believe and trust that they're already doing a lot to make our community safe, better for everyone of all color, religion, and so forth. I want to be careful that as we have these discussions, that there are people in our community that may not know what this town has already done. And I don't want to be grouped in, or I don't think we as a community should be grouped in what we're seeing on media as a big picture. Yes, maybe there's some additional things we can do to change in training and so forth, but we do an excellent job here. Maybe we can fine tune some things, but it scares me to death that we are going to be put into a group that the governor thinks is the same in every department. And I don't believe that's the case here. I don't believe that's the case in a lot of small town police departments, or even in some large police departments. So with that being said, let's just be very careful on grouping us and what we're seeing in the media. And because I do think we are doing an excellent job here. Yes, we can fine tune. We should listen to people that have concerns, maybe incorporate those comments and some thoughts into what we do as a community. But let's also be careful. And like I said, this should not be a conversation on against the police department or our community or so forth. What can we do as a community to make things better for all? That's all I really have to say. I just think we just got to be careful as this conversation moves forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak, please again use the chat feature to let us know your name, or you can also use the Zoom raise hand feature. I don't have anyone else queued up at the moment, but perhaps we can give a couple minutes.
Do we I'll suggest any question you like? Go ahead.
So if anyone, after the meeting or any subsequent meetings that we have, we're in the process of trying to figure out the best media to allow the public to see the meetings as they're happening and to be able to view them afterwards. But if anyone does have any questions that they don't think of during the meeting or before, once I post these questions for the next meeting, if anyone has additional questions or comments, please feel free to ask them or put your comments to that policereform@mountpleasantny email.com email. And we will be happy to address them. Again, as I said earlier, the state has given us this framework to go in. I would have liked to have a little more notice for this first meeting, the listening session, but looking at the schedule and trying to allow for enough time to cover the topics that the committee will be handling, I wanted to get at least this first one out of the way. So the second one is November 18th. And we'll blast that out again so that people know how they can join the meeting and make comments. And then we'll post the additional schedule of meetings. We have a preliminary schedule out there if we didn't post it already, but we'll make sure that the community has that so that they know when the upcoming meetings are going to be. And again, I'll post the questions according to what the state's guidance is that we have to cover. We're going to break it down in a process and cover sections in specific meetings.
Chief Oliva, in the interim, there are a couple of questions asked. Mr. Parker is asking, and I think you just addressed it, how else we can communicate the next meeting to increase awareness and attendance. So I believe we are posting it on our website. We're also e-blasting it out to all the residents and also posting it on Facebook. So I guess we can continue to think about other ways to do that. And then the second question was, Mr. DeRubius would like to know if the committee has been fully selected.
I believe at this point, the committee's been selected. If it's really at the discretion of the supervisor, if he would like to add anybody additionally, we're trying to keep the committee to a manageable size. I was at training a week ago regarding just this, the collaborative, and they suggested not to let the committee get too unwieldy or too many people because it gets a little unwieldy and you might not be able to address the specific questions that the state wants us to address. So we will have the ability for the public. I do want to keep it open so that by posting the questions ahead of time, if anyone does have a comment or a question, we'll do our best to address that during that meeting. The meetings are scheduled for 2 hours. If we cover what we need to cover, or we believe that the time exists in that particular meeting, then I'm open to have people comment from the public during that specific meeting. I don't have any issues with that, but I do know that there's quite a lot to cover, and I just want to make sure that we follow the state guideline, and I don't want to get caught up short. And another reason for this late notice is I wanted to have as much information as possible, and I met with sheriffs and police chiefs in New York a week ago, and they were discussing just this, and I wanted to have as much updated info before we started this process. So I would have liked to have started a little bit earlier, but it didn't happen. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
So just another point on this. We've had a tremendous amount of interest in being on the committee since we started talking about this. But like the chief said, you have to keep it to a controlled amount of people. We also are required to have people from different walks of life, not just, you can't just have all policemen or all carpenters or whatever. So you have to have people from different walks of life, whether it's religious, whether it's schools. So we try to do that properly by picking people from these different occupations that will be able to just contribute to the conversation. So we may have other people that could be like alternates. We may have committee people that may not be able to stay on for the duration of this conversation. So we may pick some alternates, and we'll let you know who the alternates are eventually.
So, Mr. Supervisor and Chief Oliva, at this time, I do not have anyone else that's looking to make any comments.
All right, then we'll conclude this meeting. I want to thank everyone for attending. We take this seriously, and I'm looking at this process as an opportunity to learn and to do what we can do better. At the same time, I'm anxious and happy to explain to the committee members and the public what we actually do. And I'm proud of the men and women that work for the Mount Pleasant Police Department. It's an honor for me to lead this organization. The town board has always been supportive, and I know that we are all we receive our power and our mandate from the people that we serve, and I take that very seriously, and I pass that down to all our officers. And we're not perfect, and they're human, but we strive to be the best that we can be. And I just I want the community to know that. And again, I'm anxious and excited to actually answer these questions and get feedback from the community, because there may be things that we can do better, and we're definitely open to suggestions. So again, I want to thank everybody. Mr. Supervisor, anything else?
I don't know, Nick, if you want to give it one more try, if there's anybody else that puts their hand up that we could address.
Again, so anyone who wishes to speak, please chat your name only in the chat feature, or use the Zoom raise hand feature. The chat feature is not going to be used to make comments. You need to enable your video to do that. Mr. Supervisor and Chief Oliva, if we have someone who already spoke and wishes to speak again, what's your pleasure on that?
I have no issue. That's fine.
Okay. Again, we ask that you keep all commentary to 3 minutes and enable your video. We do have Kelsey Paget that would like to speak again.
Hi there. I just wanted to I had specific issues on my notes here that I thought I could bring up as things I think we need to do. So anyway, I'll just go through those. No budget increases for the police. Training might cost more, but I think that It's important to not be increasing the police budget when you look into doing reforms. We should create stricter use of force lines, like use of force guidelines, like those implemented by the NYPD, and make those guidelines easily accessible on the town's website. Currently, you have to file a FOIA to be able to see the use of force guidelines. Why not have traffic agents, instead of gun-carrying police officers, perform traffic stops? Maybe not all traffic stops, but some. Do our police officers have body cameras? If not, we need to get them. We should build a system where nonviolent calls are met with social service employees instead of being met solely by police officers. This is a thing that's happening in a few different cities across the country with some success currently. We should push to get police officers out of schools. Kids don't want them there, and they are not helping to form a community relationship with the police. We should keep and publish statistics about age, race, gender, etc. of all interactions with the police, such as stops and arrests. The town should support reopening the case of DJ Henry. Since a former Mount Pleasant police officer's eyewitness testimony was not heard at the first trial, the police department should list the names of all their officers with pictures on the website, because as a citizen, it's really hard to find out who are your police officers. The town should release data about demographics of the police department. Do they reflect the demographics of our community? Disciplinary records of all officers should be publicly available. We should establish a civilian committee review board to review any complaints against the town police. And all town meetings should have the option for sign language interpretation and Spanish interpretation. So there's lots of people who these public meetings are not accessible to. And thanks, that's it for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person to speak is a Megan De Palma. If you could please enable your video. You're all
Hi.
set.
Hi. I just kind of wanted to respond to that. I understand that the point of this committee is to, kind of have reform, which I don't disagree with at all. But I just like to point out that not all residents of the town agree with everything that was just said. And in fact, the city of Poughkeepsie just had an incident where they had multiple officers injured at an EDP call that they went to, an emotionally disturbed person call. And they did respond with social workers, and the social workers were not able to de-escalate that situation. So while I understand the possibility for having social workers, and I'm certainly not opposed to it, I think we need to make it a priority that if we're going to have civilians responding, that we have a good plan in place to keep them safe and keep our officers safe. I very, very vehemently disagree with posting full names and photos on the website because I'm not a police officer, but in my mind, that would make it very easy to track people down. I'm a paramedic and I'm a nurse, and I've had patients track me down. It's scary when that happens. So I can't imagine that our police would be, that makes them kind of vulnerable, particularly given their line of work and that they do have people who they, are arresting and charging with crimes and such. So I just wanted it clear that, not the entire town does not support everything that was just said. I think the Mount Pleasant Police does a great job. I work as a paramedic and as a nurse. I've worked with many of them, all of them, one point or another. And I think they really do a good job. So, there's always room for improvement, in any job, in any situation, but you guys are doing a very good job. So thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. DeRubius would like to speak again. Please enable your video. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me speak again. I agree with Megan. Megan kind of beat me to the point. I don't necessarily agree with everything that was previously said by, I believe that was Kelsey. Talking about police in our schools. We've had the DARE program. I've known these police officers that work with my children and so forth that were extremely positive impact on the kids there. Our community is small enough that they have made great progress with the kids and were able to work with some of the kids that needed help. So again, I know I don't want to blog up this meeting, but I'd like to understand that as we move forward, that we as a community can comment and be involved with that community and attend these meetings, and except because I'm very concerned that we're going to lean, or some town members might lean towards the against the police or against our structure, which can be improved. I'm not going to say it can't, but I don't think it should. It's at the point where at the level that some people think it's at, because I think we do a very good job in this town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person looking to speak is Catherine Wilson. Please enable your video. Catherine Wilson, if you could just enable your video, we'll be able to get you up and running.
Great. I'm having some problems. I had to log in and out a couple of times. Sorry. I had written you about one of the questions that we haven't addressed is domestic violence. And I just want to make sure that we have, as part of this committee, have invited some of the leader, or at least one of the leaders from Hope's Door or the Women's Justice Center, because I know in speaking with them, they are very interested in being included as part of any discussions on reforms. And I also had a concern because I've heard from attorneys and the New York State courts that there seems to be a concern with emergency cases for domestic violence that stem from Sleepy Hollow and are being turned away in the Valhalla courts. So part of any reform is we got to make sure our courts back up our police. So if there's a disconnect with that, as you know, Valhalla meets, well, at least used to, once a week, and Sleepy Hollow is once a month. So we don't want to send somebody back to a potentially dangerous situation for several more weeks when Valhalla could address it. And then the police officer has gone through all this work for nothing. I've asked the courts, the people, to substantiate that, foil it, pull the stats, let's see what, if that's happening and how often, and if it's not anecdotal. But I thought I'd bring it to your attention that, well, you agree that part of the issue is whatever you do going forward has to have the full support of the court system behind you as well. So thank you. Oh, and one last thing. There is elder abuse is an extreme problem. And so as part of the whole social aspect, dealing with individuals with dementia who have cognitive decline, mental decline, and actually that can be more than just dementia. They're not the best witnesses. If they're threatening their families, they're also not cooperative with police. And I know the Federal Department of Justice is addressing that. So I'm going to assume that you're going to be part of that and work with those of us who are national advocates for these issues to help coordinate the grants and the training and the techniques needed for situations involving those individuals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next person looking to speak is Francesca Hagedis. Please enable your video. Ms. Hagedis, 1 second. I just sent you a request to unmute your audio so your microphone is active.
God, it never happens to me. Okay, hello, gentlemen. I haven't seen you in a while. And thank you for conducting this. I think it's very, very important. I did submit some questions in advance, and I didn't get my link until 6:29. So I been struggling here to get on here. But anyway, the questions that I sent in is, first of all, you know, most of the new officers that when I saw them being sworn in were graduates of Westlake High School. And my concern is that I didn't see a variety, I mean, of high schools in the area that were new officers were coming from. In other words, I didn't hear anyone from Sleepy Hollow, Valhalla, Byram Hills, any of the other high schools in the area. And, you know, it kind of skews it to Westlake grads, I think. I think that the majority of them are Westlake grads. And that's a good thing sometimes, and it's not a good thing, because if people got along in high school, then the officer dealing with that person may be not so tough on the person that they didn't get along with. So, you know, I think it would be healthy to mix it up. I'm sure people are applying from other schools in Mount Pleasant. It's good to be an officer in the community that you live in. That is very important. But, you know, I think it would be a good thing to mix up the variety of high schools that we have here. And the second thing I did submit in advance was, do we have any officers that are specifically trained to, and I think this was asked, but I was trying to get in the whole time, so I couldn't do this, but specifically trained to deal with people with mental health disabilities, ranging from intellectual disabilities to people on the autism spectrum. I know in Pleasantville, there are two officers that are trained specifically for dealing with people with mental health disabilities. And they are not social workers, but they're trained in that area. And I've seen them in action, and they do a good job. And does that exist in the Mount Pleasant Police Department? So those are the two things that I submitted in advance, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
So this is supposed to be a listening session, so I'm anxious to answer those questions. I'm going to hold off now. The short answer is yes, we do. We officers get training in that, and I will expound on that in a later meeting, because there's definitely going to be questions that pertain to that in one of the other sessions, at least one of the other sessions. So I'll address it, but just for now, the short answer is yes, we get officers do receive crisis intervention training and some additional special needs training. So, okay.
Mr. Supervisor, Chief Oliva, at this point, I do not have anybody else wishing to speak.
I think we're good. All right.
Well, again, we want to thank everyone for taking the time. Your comments are very important to us, and this is part of the whole process here. We will, our next meeting is November 18th, same time. All the information will be on the website. Again, you have any questions that you want to send in by email, we'd be welcome to accept those and discuss those also at a future date. The next meeting also is a listening meeting. So we will continue to gather information and questions for that in the next meeting. But again, thank you for taking the time this evening, and look forward to our next meeting in a couple of weeks.
Great. Thank you. And just for the record, I'm a Valhalla High School graduate, so if that can help to dispel anything, but we'll let you know. We'll address those issues. Thanks. All right. Have a great night. Thank you for participating.